Good afternoon, everybody. We're still waiting for quite a number of attendees, but I think we'll just crack on now. Thank you for joining us today, this session with Peter. He is going to give the presentation on lean construction benefits and challenges. Peter is the Data Center Technical Manager of Ardmac. And to just change over to Peter, if you give me 2 minutes, I'll change to him now. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Hope everybody can hear me and see me okay. So good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to join me for this discussion on the topic of early contractor involvement. I would just like to start by giving a brief introduction and explain my background and experience. I'm working with Ardmac for over 8 years now as a leading member of our design team, and during that time I lived and worked in Holland, Belgium and Denmark while involved in design and construction of multiple pharmaceutical and hyperscale data center projects for leading global brands. Today, I'd like to discuss and offer some experience-based insight into the application and consequences of implementing design process, and this is with a view to improving lean outcomes. This is centered around the topic of ECI, or early contractor involvement. So throughout the presentation, we will discuss what is ECI, or early contractor involvement, why is ECI important, including the benefits and overcoming some industry challenges. We will best practice tools for effectively managing the design process, as well as part of ECI, we will discuss some project examples demonstrating how ECI should be applied. There's around 5 slides, and it should take in the region of 25 minutes. And after that, we'll follow up with the Q&A section for the attendees. Let me just go back a slide. Firstly, what is ECI, or early contractor involvement? To understand ECI, we must understand the project lifecycle, from early pricing, from early pricing stages through the project delivery. The core stages of any build are similar to those shown on screen, and are overlapping and interdependent. In keeping with lean principles and best practice, early contractor involvement is the optimum use of time at the pre-construction stage to plan a project before it commences on site. The optimum duration of early involvement phase can differ from project to project depending on the scale and complexity. And as an example, on data center projects, we have seen this vary from 3 to 6 months for specialist trade contracts that are procured through conventional means, and up to 12 months on some IPD projects, where we take some more of a leading role in terms of IPD, or integrated project development. From the outset, contractors can analyze the scope of works and assist in commercial processes by adding clarity in areas like cost and schedule. And ECI also allows a project team to develop the technical solutions and design aspects of a project. So during this stage, contractors can introduce established construction detailing, solutions, and value engineering options. It is an opportunity to use the time to collaborate effectively between consultants and clients from a product selection perspective. And overall, ECI period before construction commences helps to problem solve, reduces risk, and promotes a true collaborative culture. Where early engagement is not taken advantage of in terms of design, procurement, and construction, it is more likely to see overlap and increase the risk of a project, and creating barriers to collaboration and success, as we see on screen. Now that we understand what ECI is and when it occurs on a project, we can look at some of the challenges and barriers preventing the adoption of ECI in the industry. Firstly, to unlearn traditional behaviors. To overcome the challenges facing lean project outcomes from a design perspective, we need to challenge the traditional behaviors and try to unlearn faulty beliefs and systems that have affected project delivery in the past. This involves views on budget constraints. The financial aspects of early contractor involvement are sometimes viewed as an expensive addition, and the phrase "we don't have the budget" or additional design time is sometimes used However, it is important to not confuse ECI with additional design hours. It is not about increasing or extending design. Rather, it is about utilizing an optimized designated planning phase for a project with the help of contractors, so problem solving commences ahead of construction. Where design hours are applied at a pre-construction stage, these can be taken from the back end of the construction program, where they would normally sit in a traditional approach. The same amount of design hours can be used, but in the case of ECI, they are used at the right time. The other issue that exists in the industry at the moment is hero culture. So where we have ECI, we rarely have heroes. In more traditional project delivery, contractor design teams are solving the job as it's built. When issues arise, the industry often looks to the heroes to save the day and put out the fires, and too often we celebrate hero culture in the construction industry. Instead, we should seek to ask, why wasn't the issue identified before it became an issue, and could this have been avoided by ECI? When ECI is looked at in terms of pre-construction phase, we can celebrate the planning and forethought that goes into lean project planning and reduce the need for heroes in our industry. Late involvement, as demonstrated on the previous slides, is an issue in terms of timing and creates barriers to success. And finally, communication. It is essential that we use our interactions with clients and influencers in the industry to encourage early contractor involvement where possible, where it's useful. This will stop clients and contractors from creating issues on site, and the pre-construction program for early contractor involvement can assist in areas of procurement and program. We can now take a closer look at ECI management tools and best practices. So to truly understand the impacts of design on lean outcomes for a construction project, we must first understand that the two are interlinked. Design and construction are interdependent, and effective design is essentially a planning process that results in lean outcomes. The approach to design for lean outcomes is not entirely unique to design, and in many ways it reflects the systems and processes utilized as part of the LPS or last planner system. Much like last planner system, it is a staged process using unique design tracking and planning tools. And in the following slides, we will look at some of the design management tools used to create a pathway to leaner outcomes. So firstly, scheduling and planning can be carried out through the use of a TIDP, a Task Information Delivery Plan. This defines design outputs under naming standards in compliance with ISO certification. It is important that the management tool is live, accessible, maintained and reviewed by the broader delivery team on a regular basis. The TIDP is most valuable when interlinked with an equally valuable design responsibility matrix, or DRM, incorporating information exchanges and clarifying the level of detail required from contractors and consultants and suppliers. A live design responsibility matrix, or DRM, allocates responsibility to the delivery team and clarifies the level of detail required on a project. It is important to note that the dates and objectives identified within these scheduling tools are key performance targets for the individuals and companies responsible for their scope, and every effort should be made to maintain and develop these design plans as the design period progresses. However, a level of flexibility is also important to account for change control on a project, and this can be supplemented by a design risk register. The Design Risk Register is another useful design management tool developed in tandem with the TIDP and DRM to identify low to high risk elements of the design that may impact the effectiveness of the design or the outcome of the project. The most useful aspect of the design responsibility matrix includes a section outlining mitigating strategy for reducing or eliminating risks to the project, and encourages stakeholders involved in the project design to speak openly about the potential pitfalls. Where Design Risk Register is used and maintained throughout a project, it has been observed that the supply chain partners and interdependent project delivery teams often support each other, offering suggestions on how to reduce risk and in turn inform both the TIDP and DRM. Through the use of regular weekly meetings and planning workshops, design teams are able to set the project wheels in motion, and stakeholders are fully aware of progress and planning. I would like to add that this is not an exhaustive list of tools and processes for early contractor involvement, but in our experience and from the basis of planning and monitoring, these processes for early contractor involvement have been observed to work in parallel in terms of progression and discussion and collaboration for teams. We'll now take a look at some of the BIM-related tools. As buildings become more complex, it is crucial to have detailed expertise at an early stage to influence the facility design. With the tools we've discussed in the BIM in place of BIM, the project becomes more manageable. Having a clear set of design deliverables developed through the TIDP, the DRM, and the risk register enable a leaner cloud-based collaboration. This enables design teams to work together remotely from different locations. Investment in software products such as Autodesk Revit for design, model generation, and layout drafting, and Navisworks Manage is for coordination with other trades and clash detection. Project models can be stored on BIM 360 Cloud for cloud-based authoring of model files, meaning that design team members coordinating services with buildings can collaborate just as effectively with other trades through cloud-based modeling platforms, solving clashes and coordination issues while working from different locations. Some of the secondary lean outcomes of agile geographically diverse BIM teams include reduced international travel, reduced downtime, and reduced cost. This can also contribute to more competitive pricing strategies for contractors. Another impactful aspect of early contractor engagement is how it encourages and enables the use of BIM on site. With verified model accuracy through early contractor involvement, we have recently implemented models on the floor without having to rely on interaction with the office. As an example of one area where this has been particularly helpful, we look to service penetration and fire stopping on data center projects. The management of building service penetrations within the internal partitions is a sectoral issue, creating challenges for multiple stakeholders, including partition and service providers, as well as end users. Where services interface with or pass through internal partitions, a third construction element is created on which multiple stakeholders depend. This is represented in model form by a penetration in a partition, allowing services to pass from one room to the other clash-free. On a typical data center project, the sum total of penetrations can be costly to clients with varying commercial impacts based on quantity, size, height, and location. Traditionally, the true cost of penetrations is unclear and can remain largely undefined until well into a construction program. Additionally, service penetrations require specific, often expensive fire stopping materials to maintain integrity of the fire partitions and conform with building standards. The existing standard management procedure for this element of works is limited in most projects. To continue on this example, resolving the issue through the application of a robust, well-defined and controlled BIM process at the pre-construction stage introduces value to projects. Where the service penetration management strategy is applied and agreed through a BIM approach, managing, tracking service openings, reliable quantitative and reportable data, and clarity can be given on detailed costs, reducing risk for all stakeholders. Ardmac have produced a BIM-led service penetration management document, providing a fully coordinated process from modeling through the site install for open penetrations. This gives our clients full visibility of project progress through the use of a specific BIM execution plan, software, and live master tracker to keep all stakeholders informed on project coordination. Where this process is introduced at early contractor involvement stage, the BIM execution plan defines contractor workflows, the total service penetration count is defined early, clarity is given on scheduling, sizing, localization, and costs. KPIs and production can be tracked and recorded on site. Risks are reduced in high impact areas of build like safety due to lack of revisits to production areas. Commercial clarity is also given. Procurement, schedule, and quality are also improved. We'll now look at some project examples. If we look at feedback from two projects where ECI was implemented for two leading global brands, one was a large pharmaceutical project based in Ireland, completed in 2019. The second was a hyperscale data center project located in the Netherlands, completed in 2019. In both cases, integrated project delivery formed the basis of early contractor involvement stages. The following feedback was sought from clients through an interview process following the completion of the projects. It was observed that IPD was a success on both projects, with clients adding that the schedule, budget, and quality levels would not have been achieved without IPD and early contractor involvement. Even though the design of the client purchased equipment was delivered 4 months late on one project, the delay was fully mitigated by collaboration by contractors proposing time-saving solutions for the benefit of the project at the early contractor involvement stage. It was suggested by the client that early contractor involvement reduced the schedule by 3 months for the pharma project and by removing the tender process, and a further 3 months by engaging the contractors early to assist in the design, thus removing the need for detailed contractor design after the early contractor involvement phase and during the construction phase. Constant clear communication, led by the steering committee, where contractors were involved, formed a collaborative culture that resulted in true cooperation. Clients agreed that levels of cooperation required amongst trade contractors is higher than more traditional projects procurement methods. Where clients chose an early contractor engagement period, they are more likely to engage with their supply chain to provide direction on decision making and construction program, reducing risk and barriers to success for construction projects. In summary, positive cultural development amongst contractors and the overall delivery team is richest during the early engagement stages. It encourages collaboration, reduces risk, creates certainty. A core group of specialists and clients and representatives can create a strong integrated schedule and steering committee for the success of a project. If that core group engages early, it can provide the best possible outcome as items like design, coordination, and schedule are targeted. Results include shortened delivery times, reduced variations, increased transparency, and opportunity in the areas of value engineering. The result is that the construction team are enabled to focus on the critical path for construction, safety, quality, and project completion without having, focus on safety, quality, and production completion without having to rely on last-minute decisions. Early contractor involvement can have positive impacts on the entire life cycle of a project, including quality outcomes, and that can impact performance of the facility. Clients see these results long after construction is complete. Thank you very much for listening to that presentation on early contractor involvement. I'd like to invite the group to offer some questions or insight into your experiences in terms of early contractor involvement, or maybe where early contractor involvement was not implemented but should have been. Just waiting for Julie to come back in.
Yes, hi everybody, and thank you, Peter, for a superb presentation. If anybody who has any questions for Peter, please ask away. And Peter, if you're looking for some, maybe examples or experience.
Yeah, I think it would be good to get some feedback from people in relation to maybe first off, where they think early contractor involvement could have been used in the past. Maybe it was a project where people thought that it was, which should have. Are there any questions in relation to that topic?
Hi, Peter. Some great presentation and really good examples there. Would you find much resistance to buying into lean systems on projects, and how would that be overcome?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that's Jason, is it? Yeah, I think at the outset we've seen some small amounts of resistance to early contractor involvement, and sometimes commentary in relation to how it might not be successful on particular types of complex construction projects, maybe like data centers or pharmaceutical projects. But I suppose it's about breaking down the barriers to that, Jason. What we see in the past is that generally that culture, that positive culture around early contractor involvement is best developed and built from the outset by some of the business unit leaders. So the idea that, let's say, a main contractor and supply chain partners would enter into discussions around the broader or bigger picture for the project. What are the desired outcomes? What do we want to get to? And more Socratic questioning around that. So if it can be determined at the outset that what's the bigger picture, what's the outcome, what's the desire for the project as a whole, it's easier to get collaboration. It's easier to build a culture, a strong culture of collaboration amongst the team members. Once that starts at the top, it's been visible to us that it's easier to filter that down into the project delivery teams. Stakeholder involvement, stakeholder backing of the initiative is essentially what's needed to break down those barriers to success.
Thank you.
Has anybody else got a question? Perhaps pop it into the little box if you don't wish to actually ask that. Hannah Forrest, a question. Perhaps ECI would be beneficial moving forward in construction project management with large residential projects like Grenfell regarding quality control.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point there. I'm not too sure who that came in from, Julie, but it's a really good point.
Hannah Forrest.
Yeah, look, it's about problem solving at the end of the day. It is much more difficult to problem solve during the construction phase than it is at a pre-construction phase. If we afford the time at a pre-construction phase for the experts to get involved and to identify the risks, to identify the deliverables, to identify where design hours need to be put in, we reduce the risk in terms of construction later on in the project. Grenfell is a very, very example of probably lack of communication as well.
Sorry, Peter, just to stop you there, you're just breaking up a little bit.
In the early contractor involvement into the picture, because when you sit with other trade contractors, when you sit with other contractors in a collaborative environment, okay, Julia?
Yeah, no,
Hello,
you're breaking up. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. No, you were breaking up there a little
Hello,
bit.
yes.
Peter.
Hi, Julie.
So that question was from Hannah Forrest.
No worries. I hope okay, very good.
Sorry, I'm here. I'm Hannah Forrest. I can barely hear you. Sorry, I can see your face moving, but I think I couldn't hear the last part of the answer.
Yeah, I think I got cut off there just as I was coming to the end. So, I suppose what I was at there was the collaboration aspect and the communication aspect at the project outset. So when we look at tools like the design responsibility matrix, okay, when we look at tools like the design risk register at the contractor involvement stage, that is where we identify the risks. That's where we are able to identify what items need to be addressed before construction. So those kind of management tools lead to discursive competence. They lead to discussions amongst contractors and client that lead to outcomes that are the opposite of the likes of Grenfell. So if you identify that fire stopping and fire-rated materials are a risk at the project outset, you can identify a mitigating strategy that involves solving that. And that leads into the TIDP or Task Information Delivery Plan in line with consultants and contractors to be able to point out, well, this is an area that needs attention. Essentially what we're talking about here is communication at a pre-construction stage to help to identify the issues. As well, what we see in terms of early contractor involvement is how contractors challenge each other. What will happen at the outset is that where risks are not identified by a particular contractor, other contractors with experience in the industry, experience in the area, will often ask the questions and hold other contractors to account, which leads to a higher quality construction product at the end also.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Neil Reynolds has asked a question. What types of contract did you utilize and which project management method, for example, RIBA or Prince2? Sorry, Peter, we can't hear you.
Okay. So typically we take large scale data center or pharmaceutical. Hello?
Sorry, Peter, you're breaking up again there.
Hello?
Peter, could you maybe
Sorry, Jim, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'll try and share my screen, maybe that will help. Is that any better?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah, is that better?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. So yeah, if we look at some of the projects that we've been involved in there from an early contractor involvement stage, typically we're looking at pharmaceutical projects where early contractor involvement has been part of the process for a long time now. That sector, that industry is quite mature. and large-scale data center projects as well are very much following in the same suit. Usually if you're looking at a period between 3 and 6 months, or for IPD projects, you could be looking at up to 12 months. Now, even though it's an early contractor involvement process and the client is on board and contractors on board, it can still be procured in a traditional fashion. So it can still be a traditional main contractor, subcontractor arrangement for procurement of specialists to inform the early contractor involvement stage. And we have developed projects in that way as well, but we've also developed projects under strict IPD contracts for both pharma projects and data center projects. Some of those examples I mentioned earlier on. In that case, there's a, I suppose, shared contingency plan and bonuses as well for contractors involved to, I suppose, to promote the early contractor involvement stage and to try and push success on a project.
And Damien Bowers, his question is, if you don't have the entire team involved in implementing lean, it's less likely to be successful. How do you ensure that the entire team comes with him? Or how does Peter ensure that the entire team comes with you?
Yeah, look, this is very much about I suppose people management and collaboration, and again the culture aspect of construction. I suppose what we're looking at here is leadership, and the projects where we've seen this work out in the best way, the projects that have been most successful, the cultural aspect of the approach has been led from the outset by project directors and by business unit leaders. So to agree in the first instance what the bigger picture is, to agree what the desired outcomes are for the project, aside from the detail. Once the business leaders essentially within that grouping are on the same page and working towards an agreed target and goal, it's easier to filter that down into other groupings. So when you enter into the TIDP stage, when you enter into a stage where you're discussing deliverables, you're discussing design risk registers, you're discussing all those aspects that are management tools on a project with design teams, start with the bigger picture. Bring the conversation that was held with business unit leaders back into that picture so that people understand what the desired outcomes are and what the bigger picture is for the project. If people understand that, if stakeholder buy-in exists in terms of the broader picture and what we're trying to achieve, you can always bring it back to that point. If you end up in a situation where there's a conflict around even a simple item like the coordination of two elements on a build, you can bring it back to the base principles. What did we agree was the desired outcome for the project? What's the best solution for the project? And you can bring the culture back around to that in that instance. If you don't define what the agreed outcomes, what the desired culture is at the outset of a project, it's very difficult to get people on board. It can be very difficult to get that stakeholder buy-in, and you're more likely to get that kind of conflict. Again, the projects where this is best implemented that we've seen, if I take a data center project in Holland, for example, cultural workshop that existed at the outset of the project was continued with business unit leaders all the way through the project, all the way through a 12-month construction program, and fed back down to the teams in a continuous communication format. So it is about defining it, it is about repeating it. The desired outcomes for the project are the most important aspect.
And Hannah Forrest has asked another question. Do you think that the industry has made enough progress with ECI in construction projects in line with the Michael Latham report? Can the industry do better moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's about information and communication and project examples. So again, if we have some case studies, if we have examples of where it's a success and we have experience that and we can communicate that to the broader industry, then we're more likely to get client buy-in, stakeholder buy-in for early contractor involvement. And that's where we need to get to. At the moment, to respond to Hannah's question, we need to do a lot more. These types of workshops, these types of discussions that we're having today, being involved in lean discussions, this is where we need to get this message across. We said throughout the slides, this is how we reduce risk. This is how we guarantee project success. I would say that if we look at sectors like possibly the pharmaceutical sector. That's quite mature. If I look back at projects that Ardmac has been involved in for 10, 15, 20 years in that sector, early contractor involvement has been a part of the process there for quite a while. If we look at sectors like data center construction, we're involved in specialist interiors there. That is maturing now and starting to learn from areas like pharmaceutical construction. So we still have a way to go. If we look outside of that, at maybe residential sectors and other maybe sectors, there's probably experts in the industry will be a little bit more knowledgeable than I am in those areas, but I would imagine that there's still some space to be made there in those areas. But ultimately, this is about the, I suppose, the coming together of a couple of different key individuals, key stakeholders. What we're very fortunate to see in the pharma sector and the data center sector is that we have very, very smart clients. They hire architects, they hire engineers, they hire planners, they hire quantity surveyors. The teams that they have internally are experts in construction. So as they develop those teams over the last maybe 10 or 15 years, they're setting the standards. They're asking the industry to respond. And as specialist contractors like Ardmac or other suppliers that are out there, we need to be able to respond to that demand, to be able to say, we can do this and we can do it to a high standard. We can collaborate with other people. We can use the digital tools that are out there. And that's also a very important aspect. Digitalization is a huge driver here. I think progress in construction, especially in terms of communication, has been pretty poor probably up until the advent and ICT. So now that we're in a situation where we can leverage the technology, where we can have geographically diverse teams, this is what is opening the door to stronger communication and early contractor involvement. The fact that we can collaborate across different countries, across different teams, without having to sit in the same room together. You know, the door is wide open. We have to walk through that door now and use the tools that we have in front of us, whether it's BIM, email, cloud-based collaboration, whatever it is. This is how we improve the industry, how we improve these sectors.
Well, that seems to be the end of the questions, unless anybody else has a question they would like to ask. No? Okay, well, thank you very much, Peter. That was fantastic. Really appreciate your time and very interesting. And just to say to any of the attendees, this session is recorded, so if anyone would like to have a copy sent to them, if they can send me an email to my email address is jfitzsimmons@caob.org.uk. And many thanks, and keep safe in the sun.
Thanks, Julie. Apologies for a couple of glitches there during the presentation and the discussion, but I hope it came across okay for the people at home or in the office, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're very
Thank you.
welcome.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Neil Reynolds says thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Right.